To Judit Wefer, that will give you some more details regarding how you could participate and how this new program are set up. So very welcome, Judit Wefer. And
thank you, Björn. Welcome back after the coffee. Welcome everyone back by your computers. I'm glad to have the opportunity for the next 40 or so minutes continue where Karin left you by going more into detail into the innovation and research program Horizon 2020. I will try to give you more details into each priority that was introduced before coffee break. And I will give a few examples how call text can look like. And you have sorry. And you have more information and more examples in the handouts, but I will not be able to go into depth in each and every one of those here, but you can go back afterwards to them. It might be a bit confusing because my slides do not correlate exactly to your handouts, but I hope that you can orientate anyhow. I also like to stress that all the information that we have on the call text, etc., are still drafts. It's still under negotiating and preparation by the European Commission and the member states. So they can change substantially. Please keep that in mind. So the priorities are 3, as you've heard. 1 part aiming at building excellence. 1 part at strengthening industry involvement in the European Research and Innovation Programme. And 1 part finding solutions for common societal challenges that we have. I hope that that message has come through now. I'm now moving on and presenting these figures that also already been introduced to you that shows that Horizon 2020 include both the blue sky investigator-driven projects on one side, on the other side, market-oriented research with greater industry involvement, and everything in between. And there are no sharp lines between them. But how they are positioned on this scale might have importance for the conditions that they have and how the call text will look like, because they have all different purposes. The ones to build excellence is directed towards individual researchers, and therefore the project calls looks a bit different than those involving large collaborations with the public sector, academia, and industry, etc. So therefore this figure is important for you to understand why it might be a bit confusing from time to time. And I will now make it more clear to you by diving into each and every one of these parts, starting with excellent science. The excellent science contains 4 different types of instruments, one being European Research Council, that is a bottom-up instrument supporting frontier research of high quality, investigator-driven. It addresses all fields of science, and you can propose any idea that you want to, as long as it is of top class. Excellence is the only criterion here, both for your project and for you as an investigator. Both junior researchers and established researchers and senior researchers and professors can apply to ERC. This is, I would say, the instrument that has increased most in budget if you compare to previous European programs. So there will be large opportunities for you in the coming years to come. Future emerging technologies is also part bottom-up that you can apply for your ideas, but you should do that in project groups. It's collaborative projects. And there are different kinds of them. It's FET open, it's for novel ideas. FET proactive, developing topics and communities. And I have an example of a FET proactive call text later. And FET flagship. They're actually large-scale, ambitious consortia that has been given 10 years funding. And one example of that is the Human Brain Project, where researchers at Karolinska Institutet have a leading role. So they differ quite a lot in between the future and emerging technologies to have this great variation of kind of topics as well. The Marie Skłodowska Career Actions, it's a mobility program. It aimed at strengthening researchers' careers, because the European Commission has identified that if we shall build this economy on knowledge and to sustain our global competitiveness, we need excellent researchers, and we need researchers with skills and networks that mobility can give. So therefore, they are providing funding for mobility projects. I also have an example of this later on. It can be both individual researchers that apply for mobility projects, but also for networks, for secondments between sectors, but also for research training. And in the networks, collaboration with other sectors, such as the public sector or the industry sector, is very welcome. And then the fourth of them is the research infrastructure instrument. It's for the large-scale infrastructure projects, both preparatory phases to propose new ones, but also for implementing those that are existing. And here we talk about the large-scale infrastructures, such as the ESS or the biobank research infrastructures that I also think that Karolinska Institutet is a part of. As I mentioned, you can apply both as individual researchers and as networks within excellent science. And those where you can be an individual researcher, you have the European Research Council, as I have mentioned, but also within the Marie Skłodowska Career Action, you can apply as one researcher. You can also find opportunity for collaboration, as I've mentioned here, both within FET and in the networks of Marie Skłodowska Career Actions, and also in the research infrastructure. Moving on to the next priority, industrial leadership. The industrial leadership, as I mentioned, aims at strengthening involvement of industry. So in the first instrument, leadership in industrial enabling technologies, there's been identified certain technologies that are identified to be important to be able to solve our solutions that we have. The technologies are the information and communication technology, micro and nanoelectronics, photonics, nanotechnologies, advanced materials, biotechnology, important for KI researchers and companies, advanced manufacturing and processing, and also space, being an important technology for us. And these projects are expected to include large-scale pilot projects and demonstration and market validation, which Karin introduced before the coffee break. She also mentioned that the current crisis has identified new needs for finding access risk finance for companies. And it has been a problem if you're an innovative company to find the right finance at the right time. And therefore, the European Commission has developed this new instrument that will facilitate high-risk finance and loans. They have also developed an SME instrument where, as Karin pointed out, single beneficiaries can apply. And those calls will be integrated within the challenges. And I'll give you an example of how that will look like later on. So the main purpose of this priority is creating and establishing close collaboration between industry and other sectors. And therefore, the leadership projects are mainly aimed at collaboration. When I say collaboration, I usually mean a minimum of 3 organizations in 3 different members or associated states to the European Union. Usually, these projects need to be larger. So in reality, they are more than the minimum. But that's the minimum requirement when I say collaboration like this. But as I also mentioned, you can be a single beneficiary, and especially in the SME instrument and in the access to risk finance. So now for the third priority, and giving some content to that one. Here they have originated from the problem and challenges, and by doing that, providing solutions, proposing solutions together with users, companies, academic sector, public sectors. These projects are therefore typically collaborative projects, as I mentioned. And these challenges that have been identified are thematically grouped in this list. Health, demographic change and well-being. European bioeconomy challenge for food security, sustainable agriculture and forestry, marine and maritime and inland water research, this is the longest one, secure, clean and efficient energy, smart, green and integrated transport, climate action, environment, resource efficiency and raw materials, inclusive, innovative and reflective societies, and the seventh one, secure societies. So the core topics are divided within these 7 challenges. And I promised you examples, and I will start with one example from the excellence priority, the excellent science. And you remember this one is the one with the blue sky, investigator-driven research, Marie Skłodowska reactions, research infrastructure, and future emerging technologies. So, there are several different kinds of projects within the European Research Council, but I've chosen to highlight one of them, and I've chosen the starting grant. And EU is with the starting grant addressing principal investigators. They are usually in the beginning of their careers, and they want to establish their position as a research leader. And then applications are invited for all research areas. The PI can themselves propose what area to focus on. And they can also define the methodology they want to use. Excellence is the only criterion, and it will be applied to, for example, the intellectual capacity and creativity of the PI, the groundbreaking nature and potential impact of the research proposed, and the methodology. And then the expected impact is by boosting the independent careers with up to almost 13 million Swedish crowns for 5 years for these researchers, that they will be able to obtain a leading research position. There are more eligibility details that are included in your handouts as well. And also an introduction to the other type of project that you can find within the ERC, you can also find there. And if you have questions and would like advice concerning the ERC, then the Swedish Research Council is the first point of contact. Moving on, for another example, I promised you one for the future and emerging technology proactive. And this is the one. And here they are trying to build on knowledge and experiences from different areas of research to combine them to create new areas with great applications. And in this particular case, they have chosen the new possibilities at the nanobiochemistry interface. There are several other topics already identified for discussion, and they are suggestions, and they're included in your handouts. But please keep in mind that nothing is yet clear about this list of topics, not even this one, but they are right now being discussed. We will know more in December, hopefully. So looking at this particular one, they have identified the specific challenge of exploring new possibilities at the intersection of nanotechnology, cell biology, biophysics, chemistry, information science, and mathematical modeling. And they want this because they want to develop new tools and techniques for advancing research. And by this list, you realize that you need to collaborate. There is, I hope, no researcher that is able to combine all these things in their own heads. But the proposal is, this project proposed different approaches. You can combine each and every one of them. And there is a list of this as well. Depending on what topic that you choose, the expected impact is also a list. And then your task is to form your project group in order to be able to achieve this impact. So both your project group and the methodology you choose must be adapted to achieve this impact. So one can say that these projects calls are more impact-driven than previously. That they are expected to find the impact, but how you do it and with whom you do it is more up to you than previous. And then my last chosen example from the excellence priority is one of the mobility one, the Marie Skłodowska reaction. And within the Marie Skłodowska reaction, you can also apply for research training networks, as I mentioned, and also for secondment projects with other countries or with international countries or with other sectors, but I've chosen this individual fellowship. And it is aimed mainly at researchers with a PhD. And they want then the researchers in the beginning or well on the way with their careers to increase their skills and competences and networks and knowledge by a mobility project. So here you can apply for a mobility project within Europe or outside of Europe for 1 to 2 years. And you choose your host organization and you prepare an application together with the host organization and send it to the EU. You can propose a project within any fields of science, and it's up to you to choose the methodology of that project. The key issue is that the mobility should add something to your career perspective that it wouldn't be possible otherwise. And by this project, the EU is hoping to improve career possibilities for researchers, and therefore also the competence base for the bioeconomy. This was my last example from the excellence, and I will move on to the 2 other ones, the industrial leadership and societal challenges. And being a bit more predefined than the project in the excellent part, they have another kind of structure. The structure looks something like this. Each work program, as Karin talked about, contains a number of core topics. And each core topic is structured like this. There's a specific challenge identified that gives you the context and the why this is focused on. And the scope of the project. It specifies the focus, but without describing specific approaches, that you have a bit more freedom to choose your approach. And then the expected impact, what is to come out of the project. That is a very important one. It also defines what type of action that each call is, and I'll come back to that more. So I'll give you an example how it can look like, and I'm starting with the industrial technologies. And as you might remember, the industrial technologies contains a variety of technologies, advanced manufacturing, biotechnology, space, photonics, etc. But I've chosen an example from the information and communication. And this particular one is about content technologies and information management. So how do we deal with the large increasing volume of data? We have now the capacity to collect and gather large volumes, but not always the capacity to interpret them. So this problem has been divided into two approaches, a research one and an innovation one. And within the innovation approach, this included how to improve the ability of European companies to build innovative data, products and services. That is, how can we build services upon the data that we have available. And the second one, more directed into fundamental research, is related to the scalability and responsiveness of analytics that we have. How can we build the capacity to take care and structure this data in a usable way? And we'll have a look at how these 2 different kind of problems are described in the work program. And here I have, for presentation purposes, deleted a lot of text. You have much more text in your handouts. But I hope that this is enough to make it understandable for you how this is structured. So as I mentioned, this one concerns scalability and responsiveness of analytics capabilities. And the growing amount of information that we have is more than our available techniques. We don't have the data mining, the machine learning that we need to be able to use these volumes. So therefore, new knowledge is required in order to develop the predictions and the progress monitoring and measurements. And this could be very important, for example, in genetics, where we can gather the data, but we don't know how to interpret it. We know how to interpret it, we don't know how to structure it, so we can interpret it in a usable way. So therefore, this is related to fundamental research, but it's supposed to come from the need of the user. It's user-driven. It should address industrial needs, even though it's fundamental research. And the expected impact is defined here quite in detail. So here as well, your task is to form a group that can address either one of these two approaches or both of them that's here proposed in the scope. And this is a research and innovation action. That will be important later, and I will come back to that. So that's about the fundamental research part of this big data problem. The innovation part looks a bit different. It addresses companies. And here, the problem is addressed at how the companies would be able to build revenue on to use the big data, how to develop services and innovative products in order to contribute to growth. And here the proposals are expected to cover one of the themes, but the expected impact is that hundreds of applications should use tens of billions used by millions of European citizens. It's quite ambitious. So here is, it's important to choose your partners well here in order to reach the millions of European citizens. But by doing so, you can gain revenues for that, and that is directed then to the companies. And this is an innovation action. Innovation action. I'll come back to the importance of that later. So is this structure starting to make sense at all? That we have work programs describing core topics in a structured way, giving you the challenge, the scope, and the impact, by leaving more or less some freedom for you to form your groups and methodology. However, I would like to stress when it's about collaborative project, the minimum is still 3 European organizations in 3 different countries. But apart from that, usually also when you address the societal challenges, as I mentioned, they are identified as problems. And in order to solve this problem, usually you need participation from all kinds of sectors, like academic research needs to work together with the public sector, the implementing solutions, the users, the end users, the companies, etc. So the project group needs to be formed in a way that it's able to achieve the impacts. And I will try to give an example to clarify that even more within the health, demographic change, and well-being theme. So I have chosen an example, still a draft, can change sustainably, could also disappear from the call, we don't know, but this is a draft example. It concerns clinical research on regenerative medicine. And regenerative medicine is more or less a novel therapeutic field, and as such, it lacks business models. So it's quite high risk for new companies to move into that field and try to develop products and clinical products from that. So therefore, the European Commission has proposed this solution, that they found projects that develop techniques in patient clinical trials. So the scope here is not to develop new techniques, but to try out those already developed in the clinics. And the call text does not specify what therapy is to be used. They do not specify what, as long as regenerative, no disease, no specific hypothesis that should be used, but the core should be clinical work. And as this is a novel therapeutic field, it is expected that academic researchers need to collaborate with innovative companies, and you also would probably need dialogue with public authorities regulating clinical trials. So this will give you a hint of how your project group needs to be formed. And that is also described more, if you would read this call text more in detail, you will get that information as well. And we don't know, but an educated guess that would be that approximately 5 projects of this kind could be funded from the same call. So there would probably be 5 different kind of approaches and 5 different kind of therapies that are trying out their ideas. And please note that the expected impact here is not only products or therapies, it's also a result to know whether your therapy did not work out. That is also an expected an important result, because then you know that you can discard that therapy and move on to the next one. But you can also be lucky and be able to develop your therapies even further. This is a research and innovation action. It doesn't say on the slide, but it's a research and innovation action. I'm moving on to the next example, and this I made it a bit tricky for me because I'll try to give an example of the SME instrument. And it is introduced in the industrial leadership priority. Karin talked about that quite a lot. It's single beneficiary, it's innovative SME, small and medium-sized enterprises, but they are integrated within the challenges. So one can say that the instrument in the industrial leadership has placed in the climate action, environment, resource efficiency, and raw material challenge, they have placed a call originating from this SME instrument. I hope this is more or less clear, otherwise I hope it will be clearer in a minute. So, for SMEs, for small and medium enterprises, as I mentioned, working with innovative high-risk ideas, it's difficult to find access to finance. And within climate action, environment, resource efficiency, and raw materials, there are possibilities then for companies working with sustainable solutions. And this is an example how that call text can look like. This particular call then is directed to smaller companies with innovative solutions for sustainability within climate, resource efficiency, and raw material. And by providing funding for these companies, and the European Commission is sharing the risk with them. And therefore, it's expected that more solutions will be able to reach the market. So that's the purpose and the outcome from this kind of projects within the SME instrument. There are no specifications on what kind of projects being asked for, but the companies that apply need to have a solid business plan for the project they propose, and they need to have the ambition to grow and to internationalize themselves. But here you can apply as a single SME. This is a new type of instrument that's being developed, and it's still being developed right now, and it's not clear yet exactly how it will work. So therefore, we would suggest you to contact us or the support offices for companies for more advice and for more updated information on how these instruments will look like. But this is more or less the idea behind it. I have given you some details on how the instruments, what the content of the instruments, and also a hint of how the call text can look like. And I will talk now a bit about the rules for participation. The rules that set out how and whom and for how much money you can take part in this project. The ambition has been for the European Commission to develop more simpler rules. It should be easier to participate in the European research and innovation programs. And as we heard on the film, now almost 2 hours ago, it was mentioned that it has become easier during the 7th framework program, the predecessor to this one, and hopefully it will be even more easier for you now in the Horizon 2020. And one of the examples would be that most of the project will have one reimbursement rate. It's not depending on what activities that are being done within the project, but you will have one project rate, and that will lessen the paperwork, and that will mean fewer audits, and it will be easier. And also the ambition is to shorten the time between the application and time to grant, and that means that projects can start earlier, and that is important not at least for the smaller companies. And also the evaluation criteria have been consolidated to 3 of them: excellence, impact, and implementation. So those are the evaluation criteria that are used for the challenges, for example, industrial leadership projects. For the ERC, only excellence is used as a criterion, as I mentioned before. And also within the Marie Sklodowska career action, being a mobility project, also mobility is of importance there. But those are the three main evaluation criteria, and they are selected due to the experiences that we already have from European programs. And the conditions of participation, I have mentioned that before, I just repeat that for collaborative projects, when nothing else is said, it's meant a minimum of 3 European organizations in 3 different European countries. However, each call text could have addition to this. For example, a call text could be directed towards working with Brazil, for example. And then, of course, that is allowed in that particular call text. But usually, 3 is a good number to remember working with collaborative projects. I have mentioned that it's important what kind of action that the project is. I mentioned research and innovation action. They're 2 different. And it depends on how they are placed on this scale, how far they are to the research-driven part and how close they are to the market-driven projects. And this would be true for most of the projects. That the research-driven projects and research and innovation actions, the health example that I gave you, would be reimbursed with 100% of the project's direct costs. In addition to that, you can have 25% of the project's indirect costs, for example, overheads. This is true for all activities within the project and for all types of organizations. So all the organizations within the health example that I gave you would be reimbursed with 100% of the project's direct costs. However, remember the innovation big data problem, the one with the hundreds of millions, billions of European citizens using hundreds and tons of big data. That was aimed at gaining revenues for companies. And that was the type of innovation action. And that kind of action, if you are a company, would be reimbursed with 70% of the project's indirect cost. However, if you are an academic partner participating in that project, you may still be reimbursed with 100%. This is also under discussions, and we don't know if how it will end up at the end, but the suggestion now is if you're a non-profit organization, you may receive 100% of your project's direct cost also in innovation actions. So I will just repeat this, that for the research and innovation actions, all organizations for all activities will be given 100% project's direct costs. If you're a company and you participate in an innovation action, like the big data innovation one, you will receive 70%. Okay, I will not repeat that again. I feel I want to, but I will not do that. I will contain myself. If you talk to me afterwards, I will say this again. And also keep in mind that this figure suggests that the projects within industrial leadership will be more prone to the 70%. That might be true, but remember the big data research one. That was a research and innovation action. The company working within industrial leadership on a research and innovation action will receive 100%. Last time I said it. So the next step, what is needed? Orientation papers. We will hopefully see drafts and orientation papers published the coming months for the call texts. There are some already circulating, and you should contact your grants offices and support offices to see what's available within your area. The calls are then expected to be published officially on December 11th this year. And my guess is most of the calls will then close during spring next year. So when you see the official documents and when you find a draft, read the work programs carefully. Find your topic. Look up what kind of type of action is it and what is needed. What kind of collaborative partners would you need? Can you apply as a single beneficiary? Can you apply as an individual researcher? Or do you need a larger group of partners? Start to think about that already now. Think about the networks that you have. How is your European network look like? Do you need to expand? Who is your friend's friend? As Karin said, most of people's partners are friends' friends. Who are they? Can you use them more efficient, maybe. It's not always easy to navigate in these work programs. And even though I said that you should find your own topic, that might be quite difficult. So use us, use the support functions. We can help you to navigate. Grant offices can help you to navigate, and the support offices can. So do not hesitate to ask us. And do that sooner rather than later, because it takes us some time as well to help you. So contact us, and we can help you to find what you are looking for. Another place to look for, if you want information, is the participant portal. This is a beta version. It's not yet available for public use, but we have some slides how it will look like. All the information that will be needed for participating in a project, European program project, is gathered here. The problem is that all information is gathered here, so you will need to know what to look for. However, it is possible to structure it in an easier way. Each call will have this kind of quadrant with more details. And remember, this is a beta version. Do not pay too much attention to the details here. But each of these quadrants, identifying one call, will contain more detailed information on the work program text, guide for applicants, templates, etc. So you should be able to dive into your call text that you're interested in. It's also another important function that you can search for keywords. For example, if you're working within climate and you want to address climate change, you can type that as a keyword, and you will get a list of all topics directed to climate change, not only within that challenge. You remember the 5th challenge being about climate, but it will also identify topics and calls within that area in the industrial leadership or the future emerging technologies or the SME instrument. So this is a good function that I hope can be useful for you. So this being my last slide, I want to also send you off with some last words. And of course, remember the 3 priorities of Horizon 2020. It includes blue sky research, investigator-driven research, company-driven research, user-driven research, collaborative research, single beneficiary research. Basically, what kind of research do you want? What more can you ask for? And they are structured in 3 priorities: the excellent science, industrial leadership, and societal challenges. And this is sort of a structure that hopefully can help you to find what you're looking for. If not, you have support functions. We also have a website at VINNOVA where we gather the information on Horizon 2020. And we have a very good newsletter that I recommend you to subscribe for, where we will give you updated information on information dates, call, launching, etc. So I would suggest you to have a look at that as well. And you have the addresses here on the slide. So by that, I would like to thank you for listening and ask Björn to ask me questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judit, for this very, very interesting presentation. And it's clear that there is something for everyone, I would say, in this program. So,
Can we also ask Karin and Sandra to come back?
absolutely. Please come up and we will start if we have questions from the audience. For all of us, also Grants Office. Tanya, please come up if there are questions for Grants Office. Yes, Tullike.
Tullike Lindmark, EU Support Office for small and medium-sized life science enterprises. I'm thinking about the possibility to apply as a single applicant or a single entity. Is that really true, considering that you need to be a sort of a name within the EU to get grants? Do you think new players will really have the chance to be able to get grants? Or do you need really to have a known name or a known professor to be as a main applicant if you're going to be as a single player?
Is this for the ERC, the European Research Council, or is it for the SMEs?
No, in
okay.
general, I guess that anybody
Either
can
way,
be
I
a
think the
single
question is, no, you don't have to be known or famous or anything. Of course, you have to have a good track record, and you have to have a really good project proposal for that. And I mean, I know that you're interested in small and medium-sized companies. So no, you don't have to be known. This SME instrument that Judit talked about is actually, it looks a bit different on the different work programs, the drafts that we have seen. Hopefully that will change. But there is also something called the European dimension. I mean, it has to be it's the European tax money, so it has to affect European citizens. So you can't be just interested in a small problem just concerning your local area. It has to be something that actually concerns all of Europe. But you don't have to be special in any way, just really, 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 really good.
Okay, thanks. That solves the problem.
Hi, I'm Lisa-Marie van der Vat from the Swedish Polar Research Secretariat. I'm just curious about European countries that are not in the EU in this. So, for example, what would be the position of Norway and Switzerland in terms of the European Commission research?
Yeah, Norway and Switzerland, which are not in the EU, they can participate in the framework program, take part, be funded, and they are included in this minimum requirement, so to say. So if you have a partner from Norway, for instance, that is one partner that counts for this minimum rule. So that's so there are some countries that are associated to the framework program, and then they pay to be part of the program, so to say, as a full member.
More questions? This one. Heather?
Heather Marshall-Heyman from Carabao. I have a question. I've been flicking through this fantastic presentation book that we've got from you. Thank you for that. And I notice on page 42, 43, both under Industrial Leadership for Nanotechnologies and Societal Challenges Health, at the bottom of these lists, it says Fast Track to Innovation Pilot. Could you expand on what that means?
Fast track to innovation. That was the question.
The pilot, yeah.
Project. Pilot.
Pilot.
Oh yeah, the pilot. Yeah. It will probably be a pilot that's called Fast Track to Innovation. It's supposed to be open to everybody. It's very bottom up, but you have to be at least 3 entities to participate. We don't know much more than that, actually. The drafts that I've seen, they don't actually specify more than that it will be, I mean, later drafts, or hopefully then by December 11th. But so we don't know that much about it. But why it's, because it wasn't in originally, this was from some European Parliament, and they wanted to really be fast. So it has to be fast evaluations, and it's supposed to be really bottom up, so whatever you think that you need. And it's both for institutes and for companies, and also for large companies. So this SME instrument is only for companies up to 250 employees. So it will be interesting to see. I think it actually complicates things, if I can have an opinion, when we talk about simplification, that we have yet another instrument. But it might be good.
More questions? So I have a question regarding if you are in a research area in humanities or in the socioeconomics, how would that be funded in this program?
You have also large opportunities within that research area, and they are funded in a similar way. They can either be 70% or 100%, depending on the type of project, and that would be, as Judit has explained, mentioned then in the work program. But there is one specific challenge. This is challenge number 6, which I now don't remember the full name of. Inclusive, reflective, and innovative societies in Europe, and it's very much focused on socioeconomic and humanities. But then it's also a reality that this research area is a horizontal theme, and it should be included in all the other challenges and in all the other projects also. So these aspects of socioeconomic and humanities should be a part of any project, actually. So, but of course, it will be a challenge for these type of researchers to find collaborative partners and so on.
I'd like to add to that, because I had a question during the break about implementation and when you should use these solutions in the public, for example. Then behavioral sciences, for example, will be very important, not at least in the public health sector. So then behavioral studies, psychological studies, etc. So I think there will be quite a few opportunities in the health, at least.
Okay, so there will definitely be opportunities for that kind of research as well. So more questions from the audience? There is one.
My name is Terry Skian. I'm from the Swedish Institute of Assistive Technology. And I have a question if there has been any discussions on addressing accessibility and in relation to older persons, persons with disabilities. I don't see this issue addressed here in this program. Would you have any comments on this? There's been
yeah, I could comment on that. The problem here, when we give you such an introduction to the program, you don't see all the details. But I think if you would go into the details and look into the health, demographic, and well-being challenge, I think you will find that kind of accessibility, not at least by using information and communication technologies, for example. There is a program about aging and independent living, and there's quite a few topics concerning that in the health program. So I would recommend you to contact someone that you could see if they have a draft of the health challenge, and I think you'll be able to find something there.
Yes.
Will you take in, Lucas Wahlström from Rhetorium, will you take in outside opinion for each and every apply that comes into these different research project? It's excellent science, and that must mean that somebody is a little bit ahead of the guys who's going to look at stuff. So how do you do with that?
I'll answer to that one. All these projects that apply to this Horizon 2020 are evaluated by other peers, peer review, by several evaluators. I don't know if the minimum numbers of evaluators, but quite a few. And for example, the excellence, that's very true. It's about something that no one knows about yet, so how can you define what's excellent? And therefore, they're applying the excellence criterion on that examples that I gave you, intellectual capability and innovative ideas, etc. They're trying to evaluate whether the idea is excellent rather than if it's possible to do. I don't know if that's an answer, but it's a peer review evaluation of all this kind of international peer review.
And I can just say that you can also apply to be an expert, so you can evaluate things. And I suggest that you all do that.
Especially now when they are broadening the scope a bit of the program, they will need more experts dealing with, for example, innovation and implementation issues, etc. And people working with those issues would be highly sought after as experts. And of course, academic researchers as well.
And patients' organizations.
It's very true. More questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Danilo Petroni from Italy. Is it true that in this program we will find the possibility to have the reimbursement of VAT?
Yes, it's true. It changed in the, it has been a change of the legislation, and now the VAT can be an eligible cost in the projects.
Thanks.
More questions? So I just have one question left that regarding the SME instrument. And you both told us that this will be integrated within the societal challenges, and the topics there will be labeled if they are within the SME instrument or not. Is that true? Would that also mean that that topic, is it necessary to involve companies in those, as it was in the previous FP7, the last call for the Innovation 2, that that certain percentage of the budget was allocated to the companies? Is that true for these topics that are labeled as the SME instrument, or is it just for...
The SME instrument is for the company.
Only-
One company can apply. Of course, you can have helpers and facilitators and people doing the research if you need to do research, which you probably will be able to do or must do. But it's for one company to apply. I don't know if anybody know about our VINNOVA's program, Forska och Väx, Research, Search and Growth. It's actually quite similar to that, or the SBIR program that exists in the States. It's very, very similar to that. But if it says SME instrument, it must be an SME that applies.
Okay, so it's exclusive for that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I just want to say that just as FP7, there was a goal for 15% of one part of the FP7 going to SMEs. Here we have 20% of the budget from a part of Horizon that goes to SMEs.
Okay,
And
great.
that's not only the SME instrument.
One more question here. Further down.
Well, actually, my name is Angel Madison from COI. Actually, I have just one internal COI's question for funding overhead. I mean, this is Horizont. It seems like overhead is 25%, and just now we have a 60, and for Marie Curie for 10%. So how is it going to be for the COIs?
It's not overhead and indirect cost.
They have 6% now in
But was the question how we deal with the indirect cost at Karolinska Institute, or how the
Yes.
Commission is
It's
ruled?
internal COI, how it is going to be. I mean, we have just now 60%.
Yeah, we have to adapt to the rules that we are now facing, that we will have 100% reimbursement for the direct costs and 25% for the indirect costs. And so this is what everyone is facing And especially that could be tough for the research institutes that have very large indirect costs as it is now. But I think we at Karolinska has, reasonable low overheads compared to other universities. So I think we are in good shape, especially when it comes to increase in the reimbursement for the direct costs. But definitely this is something that we need to discuss with all the departments and also with KI centrally how to deal with. More questions? More comments from the speakers? Anything more that you want to stress in this? I think it was fantastic, perhaps, that we have 100% reimbursement once more. I think that's one thing that I think has been clear here is that it will be simpler to navigate, it will be simpler to apply, the whole process will be a little bit more easier to engage in. And so even though I know it's complicated and there are people here to help you, so please do that and please contact us in time. So we could be of real help to you. And with that, I would like to thank all the speakers. I would like to thank VINNOVA for this excellent opportunity for giving us this information. And thank you for coming and listening. And good luck, and see you soon.